I would like to thank AIOS and POS for giving me this opportunity. I'll be discussing on the management of diabetic macular edema. Yeah. So diabetic retinopathy is a common microvascular complication of diabetes, and diabetic macular edema is a common cause of blindness in people of working age and can develop in both type 1 and type 2. So the pathophysiology is the chronic hyperglycemia, which causes damage to the retinal vessels and breakdown of the blood-retinal barrier, and hence fluid leakage and accumulation. Now it's well established that both inflammatory mediators and, like interleukin-6 and TNF-alpha along with VEGF play a role in the pathophysiology, and early treatment can control inflammation and prevent the development of edema. OCT is the most important imaging tool for diagnosis, management, and prognosis of DME. So the concept of center involving DME is important. So when there is intraretinal, subretinal fluid or thickening involving 1 millimeter diameter from the fovea, it's center involving. Then again, looking at the OCT classification of DME is important to take a decision whether a medical intervention would help or whether a surgical intervention would help. So in spongiform thickening, cystoid macular edema, serous retinal detachment without a taut posterior hyaloid, a medical management would help. And whereas in a taut posterior hyaloid without TRD or with TRD, we need to intervene surgically. So points to consider in patient management is the baseline visual acuity, duration of DME, because chronicity will affect its responsiveness and will help us in prognostication. The ocular environment and local pathological changes like ERM and systemic factors. So management options we all know are anti-VEGF, steroids, laser, as well as vitrectomy. So how do we proceed when we face a type 2 diabetic patient with DME? This is a very good flow chart which summarizes how we should take into consideration the management of such a patient. So to simplify it, steroids should be considered as first line in pseudophakic patient if a cataract surgery is planned, if there is a central serous retinal detachment, hyperreflective foci, extensive lipid deposition, vitrectomized eye, recent history of MI or stroke, pregnancy, and if there are chances of poor compliance and patient is unwilling for frequent injections. Anti-VEGF should be considered if there is concomitant PDR, if there is presence of rubiosis and uncontrolled glaucoma. Anti-VEGFs are considered as the first-line therapy and are effective, but the major concerns are in patients who have extensive fibrovascular proliferation. Obviously, it will lead to a crunch phenomena and TRD, systemic concerns, and then non-responders, persistent edema, rebound, and resistance. Non-responders in cases of anti-VEGF are about 1/3, whereas steroids is about 1/6, and around 1/3 to 2/3 DME patients fail to achieve complete resolution even after 1 to 2 years of intensive anti-VEGF therapy. Protection of foveal photoreceptors is the key to achieving maximum visual acuity potential. So why some DME patients are insufficient responders to anti-VEGF? There is ceiling effect, there is inadequate treatment, then systemic factors play a role, then maybe they have predominant inflammatory mediators, delay in treatment response, then some OCT biomarkers, which I'll be discussing in the subsequent slides, and post-vitrectomized eye. Suboptimal responses to anti-VEGF therapy can be tackled with more frequent doses, switch to an alternative anti-VEGF, switch to corticosteroids, or a combination therapy or consolidation with focal laser. So Ozurdex comes to the rescue here. It has advantages of good response in refractive DME, fast-acting, long-lasting effect with minimal systemic absorption. The transient IOP rise and cataracts are the concerns here. If the patient is non-responder, what we need to look at? We need to look at the systemic condition of the patient, then ocular factors also, then OCT specific biomarkers. They are very important with the advent of newer OCT machines. They help us decide which treatment will work better and the prognostication. So traditionally, if we look, we have been looking at these presentations of DME like spongy thickening, cystoid edema, neurosensory detachment, and tractional. But there are studies which have given us insights into other entities as well. So there are non-center involving DME, center involving DME with CNP areas, and with CNP areas having the EZ defects. Then intracystoid hyperreflective material, cystoid degeneration, middle limiting membrane hyperreflectivity. Then more than central retinal thickness, there are other entities also we look at, which is like subfoveal neurosensory detachment, which indicates local hypoxia, compromised ELM, and which leads to reduced retinal sensitivity. Then CME, which is because of the elevated VEGF and breakdown of the inner retinal blood retinal barrier. Then disorganization of retinal inner layer, increasing duration of DME, it results in worsening of inner retinal morphology. Hyperreflective foci. So they respond better to corticosteroids. Then outer vitreomacular interface issues like taut posterior hyaloid and vitreomacular traction and non-tractional DME. Outer retinal layer disruptions, then again it is related to poorer outcomes. So this is a case which shows an example of a patient who had intact outer retinal layers and showed a good recovery to anti-VEGFs. And then again, this is a case where anti-VEGFs were given, but despite of anatomical resolution of CME, the vision did not improve much. Focal laser has still got a role in the era of anti-VEGFs in non-center involving DME. So this is a patient, she responded, focal laser was done in this patient in a 6 months follow-up. The visual acuity improved to 6.9. So it can be considered in focal non-center involving DME, succinate maculopathy, and in consolidation therapy along with intravitreal pharmacotherapy. So vitrectomy for DME is considered in the cases where there is anterior-posterior traction and tangential traction when it is not responding to anti-VEGF or dexamethasone. But then there are cases where vitrectomy has a role in non-tractional refractory diabetic macular edema as well. So the conclusion is tailoring therapy for the best outcomes, tailoring treatment to patients considering the non-ocular factors as well, and tailoring treatment to patient considering the ocular factors. So in conclusion, DME management is complex and multifactorial. Approaches to treating DME vary broadly. Economics and resources play a role. Systemic control, comorbidities, and genetic factors also play a role. So we have to individualize the treatment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Palvi, for summarizing such a vast topic in such a short time. I think the issues which we are discussing today, they're all very important, and maybe we can leave the discussion to the end, because I think most of the retina surgeons around